All right, this week we're talking about thinking about supervision that makes a difference. As you already know, this class is about physical education supervision, and one of the things that I want you to be able to do by the end of the semester is I want you to be able to recognize quality teaching. Unfortunately, in our profession, there's a lot of poor teachers, but there's also a lot of great teachers. And those are the ones that I want you to be able to recognize. One of the things we did last week, we looked at the different pictures because I wanted you to see what quality physical education can be. Instead of looking at pictures and saying, oh, what they're doing is great. I want us to be thinking about the things that should be taking place over the course of a class. Alright, so what I'm going to do is just kind of share a few things with you as we go through this PowerPoint presentation. I have 15 minutes to record this, which is good because I don't want to make this too long. I just want to be able to add a few things to each slide. So we're going to go through this together. When we think about teaching supervision, the question I ask is this. In your opinion, what on this list is most important? We think about lifelong learning skills, inquiry, reflection, collaboration, dedication to professional growth, development. We have to consider what's most important. And so when we look at teachers and when we're teaching ourselves, many times our lessons are going to be geared to what it is we want to develop in the children that we're teaching. When you look at the last statement, opportunities for development, the question becomes what is considered an opportunity for development. In physical education, we have so many opportunities to develop our skills, whether that's talking to other teachers, going to professional conferences. We have a lot of ways of improving what it is we're doing in the classroom. We think about standards. The main importance of a standard is that they do serve as a guide, but they also hold us accountable. If we didn't have standards, then how would we know whether or not our teaching is considered to be of high quality? If you're familiar with NASP, you know that there's 6 standards. One of the things to think about is this. If you look at each standard, consider, is it being achieved? What will the classroom look like? So for example, standard 3 participates regularly in physical activity. That one's easy to see. When we are evaluating a physical education classroom, we want to see the students moving. We want to see the students active. We want to see them participating instead of sitting off to the side. We think about accountability. If you look at number 1, we know that standards are here to stay, but standards are a good thing, as we previously talked about. In 2, evaluated on achievement. Is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? But many schools now are going to an evaluation system where it's linked to student achievement. And for physical education, especially when we consider the team model, it's not necessarily fair because sometimes our work as a teacher is based on how they're doing in other classrooms. But I think more work's being done to get that change. And then 3, where does support come from? In physical education, we need all the support we can get because one of the things that we're doing is we're constantly striving to get better as a teacher. Teacher effectiveness, the main question is, do you agree with this statement? Let's read it together. Teacher effectiveness, in the narrowest sense, refers to a teacher's ability to improve student learning as measured by student gains on standardized achievement tests. I think when you read that statement, there's a lot of truth, but you also have to consider that sometimes we shouldn't measure a student's improvement just on test scores, because sometimes that improvement can be seen with our eyes instead of looking at the results on a sheet of paper. Also, when we think about teacher effectiveness, think about stories of teaching and think about what happens when the expectations are high. Think about what happens when the expectations are low. If we have high expectations of our teachers, typically we're going to be held accountable to try to meet those expectations. But as I recently went into a school where this one teacher was not being held accountable, the principal didn't really care what this teacher was doing. This teacher continued to get high marks. But the physical education program was really in bad shape. And I really believe a big part of that was because no one was holding this teacher accountable. So we look at value added movement. This is one way to look at how evaluation can take place. But what could be the negative of this plan? Notice what it says. Value added models directly assess how well teachers promote student achievement as measured by gains on standardized tests. So this goes back to what we previously talked about as it relates to achievement. Although the intention of the model is good, it may not necessarily provide a total picture of what's taking place with the student in the class. We look at developing a vision. This is something that evaluators need to consider as they're evaluating teachers. In other words, what do I stand for? What is my personal vision about teaching, students, and achievement? What does good teaching look like? To be an effective evaluator, we have to understand what good teaching is and what it looks like. What separates good teaching from excellent teacher and mediocre teaching? Okay, so there's going to be certain benchmarks that we're going to be looking for that's going to be able to allow us to separate the excellent teachers from the good teachers. And then what type of support would teachers need to achieve good teaching as I envision it? So again, as an evaluator, you need to be prepared not only to offer feedback, but also offer the support that teachers need in order to improve in their classroom. And then finally, what type of teaching do students need in order to learn? Can all children learn? That's the great thing about teaching. Everybody has different strengths, everybody has different tools, and we use them to our best of our ability. As I shared with you last week, the question was, who's been a great teacher in your life? Probably each teacher that you guys named, if we were to put them all together in a group, they would probably share similar qualities, but there'd also be things about them that would be different from one another as well. We think about school culture. Here's what I want you to remember about school culture. When you guys are searching for a job, some of you have already been a classroom teacher, been a physical education teacher at different levels. The principal that you're going to be working under, that person plays such an important role. So one of the things I always remind my students is seek out excellent principals. If you have a quality principal, a quality leader, it's going to make your job so much more enjoyable. And so if you have a principal who values your coaching ability more than your teaching ability, you probably don't want to go to that school because we want somebody who's going to value what we're doing as teachers and the impact we're having on all students. So when we look at norms, I had the first two principals that I worked for in South Carolina, Mr. Brugel and Miss Fleming. Both of them were excellent principals, but they were both very different for a variety of ways. When we think about norms and we look at this list, what do you believe is most important? There's a variety of things that I loved about Mr. Brugel, but there's also a variety of things that I loved about Miss Fleming as well. So when we think about quality teaching, we think about effective leadership, there's a variety of characteristics that we can have that allows us to be effective. We think about trust. In any sort of leadership and in any situation where you're going to be evaluating someone, they want to be able to trust you because they're going to rely on you to assist them as they go through the learning process. And so we think about what we read last week, the Physical Education Hall of Shame. I love those articles because they're simple to read, but they make just such a valid point as it relates to physical education and our job and the importance of our job. So careful consideration is needed when we evaluate teaching. When you were reading the article and you were thinking about some of the examples they were sharing, some of you might have thought, you know what, I did that when I was teaching. Some of you may have thought, you know what, I did that the other day. And we may think, man, this is a great activity. But in truth, it may be a very ineffective activity. And maybe we didn't know it because we didn't understand what was going on. And so when we read that article, I think it's very enlightening for us as we consider what effective teaching is and what it looks like. And so if you read the article, to qualify for the Hall of Shame, a game or activity need only possess one of these elements. So look at these 7 elements. This is critical. Absence of the purported objectives of the activity or game, potential to embarrass a student in front of the rest of the class, focus on eliminating students from participating, overemphasis on and concern about the students having fun, lack of emphasis on teaching motor skills and lifetime physical fitness skills, extremely low participation time factors, and extremely high likelihood for danger, injury, and harm. So if we read that list, it's pretty simple for us to understand that if these things are happening in an activity, we probably don't need to include it in our curriculum. Two, I want to really point out and focus on. Number 3, focus on eliminating students from participation. So many of the students that I've had in the past will include a game or will teach a game, and the game may be fun, it may be enjoyable, but they don't realize that the elimination of the students can have a long-lasting impact on their participation and the enjoyment that they have from being active. And so that leads us to number 4. We shouldn't be concerned with whether or not the students are having fun. If we're doing our job as physical education teachers, whatever we do in the classroom is going to be fun, because if we're enjoying what we're doing, the students are going to enjoy the activity as well. I love looking at this list of 7 because it could lead us to some incredible discussion. And so when you think about your discussion for this week, you're answering 2 questions for each of these 6 activities. Now, I don't want you to write an essay. I don't want you to take a tremendous amount of time for each one. What you're going to do is you're going to create a list of the negative features. So for example, with line soccer, just tell me a few of the negative features. What are the most prevalent negative features of that game? But on the flip side, what can you do to make it a beneficial activity? So how can you change the game? How can you update the game to make it more effective and more beneficial for the students that you're teaching? So we're going to do that for all 6. Hopefully this week you'll be able to see everyone's post, and we'll be able to generate some good discussion as it relates to games and making some simple changes to those games. And so this week your assignment is to read the 2 articles that I sent to you. Please make sure that you complete writing assignment 2 by Friday by 11:59 p.m. Please make sure that you do upload that to eCourseware so that I have the ability to post your grade for each person, because if you don't upload it yourself and you send it to me by email, I can't go directly into the Dropbox and be able to add a grade through your assignment. So anyways, that concludes this particular chapter. I hope the things that I shared with you were beneficial and kind of added to the presentation. I will see you guys next week. Have a great week.